You need to identify the research need that needs to be solved. Then we develop the requirements, and then we evaluate the existing capabilities and gaps that we have in our current inventory. We have key questions about what do we have, who do we work with, how often are we delivering, how often are we using technology, what's the current experience, what do we have to keep, what seems unnecessarily complicated, what do we need to achieve that our tech isn't letting us achieve. Possible outcomes: the tool exists, but it's not meeting your needs. There's no existing tool for this function currently in the tech stack, or the tool exists and it meets the needs. So you have three very large buckets, very key buckets that this current assessment could result in. Then we create the scorecard with your must-haves, your need-to-dos, which I translate requirements into it needs to do this, and then your nice-to-haves. It would be nice if it could do this, but it's not a requirement. A requirement is it absolutely needs to do this. A must-have is if it doesn't do this, it doesn't even get to be considered. So we go through those. The must-haves typically are your IT infrastructure. I've seen cases where a particular technology wasn't considered because and this is for especially large enterprises, an enterprise size organization might work with a particular cloud provider, but that cloud provider, there's an agreement that says that all technology must be based with that particular cloud provider, and the tech that you are looking at uses a different cloud provider, which makes it a no-go. So things like that become your must-haves. Does it use that particular cloud provider? Yes or no. If no, it doesn't pass. You can't consider it. Then we go into our 5 core ResTech evaluation categories. I have found that these tend to be the core categories that really holistically give you a clear view that will help you with your implementation strategy. So first, what is the core functionality? When you're testing the technology, does it address your primary use cases? The projects that you've identified that this technology needs to handle, does it handle them? How well does it handle them? What capabilities are supported and unsupported? For example, if you're looking at a survey platform and you need it to run conjoint and max diff, does it run those? If you have found that the majority of your respondents are taking surveys on mobile, does it have a good mobile experience? Does it have a clear mobile experience? And then does it output data in formats that you can use? So this is a key tie-in to some of your vendors that you might use. If you are downloading the data and handing it off to a vendor for reporting, what data outputs does that vendor need in order for them to run the reports? Do they need SPSS, but your vendor doesn't support SPSS? That's going to be a problem. If it's using AI, check what the accuracy of the output is and look for how the vendor is explaining the AI output. That is huge when it comes to AI. We're going to talk at the end about some key AI risk factors itself. Then the user experience. How steep is the learning curve? If this is a particular technology that's only being used twice a year, but it has a really steep learning curve, that's something you need to take into account, because essentially it means you're going to be relearning the technology every time. And if this is a SaaS type of technology, that means that probably between the time that you use it the first time and the time that you use it the second time, if there has been enough time in between those two instances, it's probably changed. And we all know how frustrating it is to try to find the menus the second time around. Then you're looking at how often will users need to relearn the tool, how are tech issues handled? When there's a bug, how quickly is that bug addressed? Who addresses it? How efficient are the key workflows for addressing bugs, for addressing issues, for help support, for I need help finding this way to do this. I know that we went through this in training, but I can't remember it. Can someone help me? Then your technical considerations. What does it take to set up this technology so that it works for you? There's always customization. How robust are the security and privacy controls? Always read your terms and conditions when you are looking at your technology. You might be surprised at what they say about who owns the data and who owns the output. So read your T's and C's. What are your performance and stability measures? What are the data management systems? Then you go into your IT and compatibility. What data can be imported and exported? Does it integrate? Does your IT team give it their blessing? Is existing infrastructure sufficient to implement the tool, or does existing infrastructure need to change? This is a thing that has been surfacing, especially as AI tools are coming into organizations. Teams are finding that the existing infrastructure that they have within their organizations isn't always enough to be able to support the AI tools themselves. So this is a huge question that needs to be asked. And your IT team is the one that is most empowered to be able to answer that question. And then if you're importing data, especially if you have a lot of data and you're going to be migrating that to this new tool, to a new platform, can you just take that data and export it from the one and import it into the next? Or are you going to need to export all of that data and then take a month to reformat all of it before you can put it into the new tool? That's a huge question that is not being asked a lot of times. And then, of course, your business considerations. What's the pricing structure? Does your legal team agree with the terms and conditions? Does your legal team agree to the terms of the contract separate from the terms and conditions? This was one that I saw actually trip up a team for 9 months because there was back and forth on a particular element of a contract. So definitely bring your legal team as early as possible. How are unused funds addressed at the end of the agreement term? This is another huge question that is being missed. So let's say it gets to the end, you're doing a subscription, comes to the end of that subscription cycle, you still have, out of a $50,000 subscription, $10,000 are left. Before you get to that point, you should know if that $10K is going to be able to roll over into an extended 6 months, or if that $10K is a use it or lose it matter. Get that up front before you hit that possibility. And then, of course, who owns the data? And if you decide that you're no longer going to work with that vendor, how easy is it for you to download all of the data that you have collected with that vendor? Now, implementation. Things to be considered when creating your implementation strategy. Is it going to create manual work elsewhere in your research process? Will your deliverables change enough that now you need to not only train new users, but you also need to train your stakeholders in how to actually read or use the new output? How critical are the requirements that the tool doesn't meet? Because not all tools are going to meet all requirements. You're going to have to compromise in a lot of cases. Will infrequent use require frequent training? So how often are you going to need to retrain users on the tool? How well does the tool handle unexpected growth in demand? So let's say you're running 5 projects a quarter, and suddenly, because it's doing so well, you're going to need it to handle 20 projects a quarter. How well can it scale and how quickly can it scale? And then what teams and processes beyond the obvious will be affected? This is a great opportunity to look at your entire process chain and see if we implement this technology, it's going to have this effect at all places along that chain.